Welcome, everyone. I'm Lorelei Tangi, the University Librarian at UCI. For this event, we are offering an optional live transcription. And if you'd like to try it out, go down to the bottom of your screen and click on Live Transcript or Closed Captioning. And that way, what we are saying will appear as subtitles at the bottom of your screen, or you can select View the Full Transcript so it appears on the side. So while some of you might be trying that out, I'd like to start tonight's program with a land acknowledgement of our presence on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Ahashiman and Tongva peoples. Today, we are so excited to open our fall virtual exhibit From I-Ching to Manga, UCI's East Asian Collection celebrating 30 years. Established in 1990, the UC Irvine Library's East Asian Collection supports research and teaching at UCI, and it serves as an educational and cultural resource for the community. In just 30 years, the collection has grown from 8,000 Chinese books to over 120,000 books, with access to journals, newspapers, and multimedia sources in Chinese, Japanese, and Korean languages, making it one of the fastest growing collections of its kind in the nation and the largest East Asian collection in Orange County, California. Now, the exhibit celebrates the collection's growth and evolution. It highlights its treasures and it spotlights grants and gifts from our local community and global partners. On the virtual website that you see on the screen, users can click on each category, which is on the right, and view items that are curated for each of these themes. And I hope you will visit the virtual exhibit at the URL that is listed in bold at the bottom of this slide. It's also listed on this next slide as well. We are honored that so many people are attending this event. We wish to acknowledge the people present, which includes UCI faculty, students, staff, alumni, former library employees, community members, and members of the Council for East Asian Libraries, a committee of the Association for Asian Studies. We also acknowledge the contributions of Dr. Calvin Boyer, former university librarian who started the East Asian Collection, William Wong, UCI Libraries' first East Asian librarian, and Abraham Yu, our former East Asian Collection cataloger. The three of them laid the foundation for this wonderful collection 30 years ago. Now, normally we would invite you to a reception after the program to mingle and socialize, but with the pandemic instead, we will provide a Zoom meet and greet so you can virtually network with each other and learn more about the exhibit in the libraries. And we will share details at the end of the program and hope you will stay to join us. Next, I would like to acknowledge the exhibit curator, Dr. Ying Zhang. Ying has been working at UCI Libraries for 14 years as the research librarian for Asian Studies. She curated a previous library exhibit in the spring of 2009 called Shanghai's Two Faces, Cosmopolitanism and Globalization. She travels frequently to East Asian countries and regions for academic and personal cultural experiences. I'd also like to thank the library's 2019 Korea Foundation intern, Soo Kim Bae, who assisted Ying in creating this wonderful exhibit. Now, some of you know the exhibit was originally scheduled to launch in person in the spring of 2020 before the COVID-19 crisis. And our team has worked hard to convert the exhibit into a virtual format that can be enjoyed by people around the world. And when our doors reopen, whenever that might be, the exhibit will be on display at the Muriel Ansley Reynolds Gallery, located in Langston Library. I'd like to acknowledge and thank all the staff that made this exhibit and event possible. And now it's my deep pleasure to introduce our esteemed speaker, Yong Chen is a professor of history and the Associate Dean of Curriculum and Student Services for the UCI School of Humanities. Among his numerous publications, he is author of Chop Suey, USA, The Story of Chinese Food in America. The book explores the rise of Chinese food, revealing the forces that made it ubiquitous in the American gastronomic landscape, and it turned the country into an empire of consumption. Professor Chen has also co-curated a museum exhibit on the history of Chinese restaurants in the United States, and his commentaries on food, immigration, and Sino-American relations appear frequently in the media in 4 different languages. Professor Chen is a frequent user of our East Asian collection, and in conversation with Ying, he will now share how he used this important collection in his research and his work. So please join me in welcoming Professor Chen and Dr. Ying Zhang.
You're on mute.
Thank you, Lorelai. And it's my great pleasure to interview today our honored guest speaker, Professor Yong Chen. And my first question to you, Dr. Chen, is that we are here to celebrate the 30 years anniversary of the founding of UCI's East Asian Collection in the library. Can you please share with us your thoughts about this important occasion?
Well, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Lorelai and colleagues from the library for the efforts that they all have made in organizing this amazing celebration since last year, and for inviting me to speak tonight. It is a great honor. Now, going back to your question, Dr. Zhang, in the past 30 years, the whole world has changed. 30 years ago, China, the country where I grew up, was still an underdeveloped and poor country. Its GDP per capita was slightly over $300. $300. Can you imagine that? By 2019, however, China's total GDP has increased by 40 times to more than $14 trillion. And its GDP per capita has exceeded the $10,000 mark. And at the same time, all of us in the past 30 years have also changed along with the transformation of the world. Back in 1990, I was still a graduate student at Cornell University, as skinny perhaps as the Chinese economy at the time. If you could show the picture to the audience, they will know what I mean by that. I was there also trying to finish my my dissertation.
Yeah, okay. Am I sharing that right now?
Yeah, please, just show the
next slide.
First two slides.
Yeah, I think Colin is sharing. So next, please, Colin. Yeah.
So the red dot at the bottom of the chart shows the dramatic growth of the unparalleled in world history growth of the Chinese economy, and the second one shows the skinny Chinese student from China with a skinny economy at the time, trying to finish his dissertation. My colleagues who were at UCI in 1990 and helped to create the East Asian Studies collection, such as Pauline Yu, Steve Carter, Bing Wang, and Ken Pomerantz, have all left UCI. Speaking of UCI itself, the university has also been transformed. 30 years ago, it was a 25-year-old new university with an undergraduate population of about 13,000. Which has since increased to more than 30,000. The creation and growth of the East Asian Studies collection is one of the changes that have taken place at UCI since 1990. Changes that have helped to launch UCI into the 21st century as a top-ranked institution across the country and around the world. In 1990, as Laura just mentioned, the East Asian Studies collection started with just about 8,000 Chinese language books. Now it has over 120,000 titles in 3 different languages, Chinese, Korean, and Japanese, making it one of the fastest growing East Asian Studies collections in the US.
Thank you. And when you think of UCI Libraries and its East Asian collection, what words or images come to your mind?
This is a very good question, Dr. Chen. As someone who studies food and has benefited from the UCI library collections, especially the East Asian Studies collection, when I think of the library and the East Asian Studies collection, I think of restaurants. I mean, high quality restaurants.
Good. And that's an interesting thought. Professor Chen, what are some of the main similarities between the two? Can you elaborate?
Well, I can count 8 similarities between the two. The people in the audience can guess what these 8 are, and let me know if I miss anything. I'm going to give you 5 first. Similarity 1. It is easy to understand. Restaurants provide food, and food is the most basic necessity in life. Libraries, on the other hand, are a source of information and data, which are the most fundamental necessity in the intellectual life of scholars and students. Similarity number 2 can be characterized in one word: variety. Scholars and students go to libraries for a wide variety of data and information in different areas and in different formats. Similarly, in restaurants, diners can find various kinds of dishes from different cuisines, cooked and served in different ways, ranging from mass-produced and casual foods like the hamburger to exquisite dishes enjoyed by a relatively small group of diners on special occasions. The UCI East Asian Studies collection parallels the East Asian cuisines in the restaurant industry. In this collection, scholars can find fine dining kind of sources on topics like I-Ching. At the same time, they can also find street food sorts of materials like popular magazines and manga. Similarity number 3 is that both the library and the restaurant have become an increasingly integral part of our life. The first library, supported by public funds, appeared in Peterborough, New Hampshire in 1833. Today, about 60% of all Americans over the age of 16 use the various services of public libraries. The restaurant is also an institution that started in the 19th century, marked by the opening of Delmonico's, which was owned by the 2 Delmonico brothers, John and Peter, from the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland, first as a cafe in 1827, and then as a restaurant in 1830 in New York City. The need for restaurants increased significantly as a result of socioeconomic changes, such as the rapid expansion of the US economy, urbanization, growing international immigration, and the ever-expanding desire for the American dream. I should add that beginning around the turn of the 20th century, Chinese food became the first cuisine to gain tremendous popularity around the country. In fact, it was the first class of food to become a standardized cuisine for mass consumption at a national level. Inexpensive, convenient, and fast served. The food in Chinese restaurants made the once exclusive experience of dining out accessible for millions of Americans, including minorities such as African Americans and immigrants like the Jews, who loved Chinese food on all occasions, especially during Christmas. I have to mention this because the holiday season is coming. Since then, dining out has become an essential part of our daily existence. Before the pandemic, every other meal was consumed away from home. Similarity number 4 is a discovery that I made when I was researching the history of Chinese food in the US. I realized that early Chinese restaurants performed many different and important social functions. They existed as community centers for the physically mobile immigrant laborers and those living in crowded Chinatowns. The restaurants also provided an important space where to socialize and to relax. Likewise, the American Library Association identifies numerous similar social functions of the library, serving as a central public space and as a shelter for people who need it. Students go to university libraries, not only to do research, but also to read stuff. I mean, just stuff, right? Or surf the internet for fun. They meet each other for group projects or other purposes. And sometimes they go there just to take a nap. So for many students, in other words, the library is also a space where to socialize and to relax, just like the restaurants.
Thank you. So true. So now, can you talk about UCI's East Asian Collection, its importance, and how often do you use it? What do you use it for? And how important it has been for your research?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I've surveyed numerous scholars who work on East Asian East Asian issues for their comments on the East Asian Studies collection of UCI. A consensus shared by all is that as a world-class university located in the Pacific Rim, UCI must have an excellent East Asian Studies collection. There are about 30 or so faculty whose primary research is focused on East Asia. And these faculty are from various disciplines across the campus, including anthropology, art history, comparative literature, drama, East Asian studies, film and media studies, history, my own department, political science, psychology, and sociology. UCI has several research centers to support the work of those faculty, such as the Center for Asian Studies, the Center for Critical Korean Studies, and the Long Institute. An excellent East Asian Studies collection is also essential for such research centers. As Professor Joseph Jiang, the director of the Center for Critical Korean Studies, notes, now I quote him, "First-rate research centers rely on first-rate libraries and library East Asian Studies collections." This brings me to similarity number 5, which I call signature dishes. An established restaurant or cuisine is often known for its signature dishes, such as the original barbecue chicken pizza in California Pizza Kitchen, kimchi in Korean food, Kung Pao chicken in Sichuan restaurants. By the same token, an established library is known for certain particular collections of volumes that cannot be easily found in other places. The UCI East Asian Studies collection has numerous treasures, such as the I-Ching collection and the collection of the weekly shonen magazine, which is a weekly shonen manga anthology issued every Wednesday. A new faculty working on East Asian religions finds both the I-Ching and shonen magazine collections special and useful. Those are her own words. She said that using the manga magazine collection in classes, now I quote, can give students some idea of the history of one of their favorite Japanese forms of art. Many colleagues use, including myself, the East Asian Studies collection quite frequently. Some have even increased their use during the pandemic, which brings me to the sixth similarity between the restaurant and the library, which is that they both provide delivery and takeout services. Okay, so when we think of libraries and restaurants, many of us tend to think of them both as places that we have to visit physically in order to receive the services that we need. This is actually not entirely true. Delivery has been an important service that both institutions have been providing for decades, for a long time. In the food industry, Chinese restaurants were among the first to start the trend of food delivery and takeout. Similarly, interlibrary loans have been a delivery service long used by library patrons. During the pandemic, the popularity of food delivery services have grown tremendously, and the library has also increased its delivery services as well. So here is a personal story that I would like to share with the audience. I recently received a grant from the CCK Foundation of Taiwan to study the globalization of the food culture of Taiwan. A famous critic has written 3 very interesting and very important articles about the origin and the development of Taiwanese beef noodles as yummy and signature dish in the food culture of Taiwan. It is fortunate that our libraries, East Asian Studies, has a copy of his book that includes these 3 articles. It is unfortunate, however, that the library was closed because of the coronavirus. Mobile ordering and delivery and takeout turned out to be my solution. So I ordered the food online using the computer at home and drove to the parking lot near the Lansing Library and called the library from there. Within a few minutes, someone from the library came to my car with that book. This sounds just like a takeout experience at a restaurant, right? Now, similarity number 7 is reflected in the special spaces that can be found in both restaurants and libraries. Restaurants often carve out special sections, such as bars of different sorts and chef's tables, to meet the varied needs of customers. The East Asian Studies collection also has such special physical spaces, most notably the Korean corner, located on the first floor of the Lansing Library, is one such space. It helps people, including undergraduate students and members of the community, to learn about Korea, ranging from its economy to its culture, to its art, and so on and so forth. And the Korean corner also has designated study seating for students. It also has a DVD player and a TV set for watching Korean language materials, and as well as a designated computer for accessing digitized data directly from the National Library of Korea.
Okay. Thank you. So now I think we have you have talked about the 7 similarities in your previous discussion, and including the fundamental necessity, resource diversity, historical context, and social function, signature items, delivery, and space. So what is the 8th and the last one?
All right, let's start with the restaurant. The heart and soul of a good restaurant is the chef. Bistro Nas in Temple City, probably the best Chinese restaurant in Southern California, received a Michelin star in 2019 when the Michelin Guide came back to Southern California after being absent for about a decade. During the pandemic, the chef of Bistro Nas comes to Irvine, right, traveling like 40, 50 miles south to cook a meal for takeout on a regular basis. Although it is cooked at a different restaurant in a different city, the food retains unmistakably Bishop's caliber. The heart and soul of an East Asian Studies collection is the librarian. As restaurant owners like Alice Waters, leader of the slow food movement in the US and owner of the legendary restaurant named the Japanese in Berkeley, would tell us, central to the high quality of a restaurant and its food are the ingredients. Luckily, UCI's East Asian Studies collection has had two fabulous librarians. First, Dr. Bill Wang, and now Dr. Yin Zhang. Because of their dedication and remarkable knowledge, UCI has built a high quality collection in East Asian Studies that well serves the research and teaching needs of our faculty. One scholar knows that when she first arrived at UCI in 1992, she had to travel to Los Angeles or Berkeley to work on her research. But that situation changed after new collections were subsequently and strategically built by, now I quote, our amazing research librarians. Many of us know Dr. Wang's amazing contributions to the building of the working core collections in East Asian Studies. I should add that he's also very knowledgeable of Chinese history and classical Chinese, which he often used to help faculty, including those outside the East Asian Studies disciplines. One of them is Bill Lilliman, a renowned scholar of German literature and former executive vice chancellor of UCI, who was a strong supporter, by the way, of East Asian Studies and the UCI Library East Asian Studies collections. He happens to be an avid collector of Qing glassworks. Dating ancient glassworks can be extremely tricky and challenging, requiring extensive historical and linguistic knowledge. Dr. Wang provided critical help to Bill Lilliman on numerous occasions, and in so doing, gained an important ally for the East Asian Studies collection. This exemplifies the efforts by our East Asian librarians to serve the UCI community at large. In their response to my survey, many East Asian colleagues also praised Dr. Zhang. One notes, Yin has been a godsend. I cannot tell you the number of times she has helped me track down an article that wasn't available in this country. This helped me, this colleague also said, in the past, I attended the workshops she held on library resources. I found her suggestions invaluable, and I use them to this day. She has also found books relevant to my research interests that I had not known about. The renowned chef, Jack Pepin, once said that cooking is giving. Our two East Asian Studies librarians are very giving and very generous people. Clearly, when we talk about the excellent service we receive from these two librarians as faculty, it is not simply the equivalent of things like getting your spoons, napkins, or soy sauce in a punctual and precise manner in a restaurant. Rather, it also entails an intellectual dialogue that helps faculty navigate the constantly shifting landscape of archives and databases. In conclusion, food brings people together as a family and as a community. So does the East Asian Studies collection at UCI. So thank you all for taking the time during the pandemic to participate in the celebration of the East Asian Studies collection at UCI. Happy 30th anniversary. Again, thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Chen.
Thank you, Professor Chen and Ying, for this fascinating conversation. I love your similarities between the library and the restaurants, and I'm quite sure many of us will be ordering Chinese takeout right after this program. You've really inspired us. And now it's time to invite audience members to submit your questions via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And to get us started, while people are submitting their questions, I have a question. Professor Chen, what has been the most surprising discovery that you've found in the East Asian collection? I think you are muted, so you'll need to unmute.
Well, I was saying that was a very good question. For someone who goes to the library frequently to socialize, to relax, and to do research, right? There have been many very pleasant surprises. And one of them is a discovery that I made when I first started to research food, and especially Chinese food in the US. At first, I thought, when I started that research project, I thought, okay, UCI has a small, it's a new university, and the East Asian Studies collection is relatively small. I would have to go to libraries in Los Angeles, Berkeley, on the East Coast, or even China, right? Which I did, right? But what I discovered is that the East Asian Studies collection at UCI, even at that time, already had a lot of books that are very relevant and useful for my research. And it is an ever-growing collection, I should add. A collection now that has over 1,000 titles on the topic of food, over 1,000.
In the Chinese
Thank you for that question.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question. So our next question is, there is a rumor that Panda Express is thinking of opening their restaurant in China. Panda Express is known for their American adaptation of Chinese food. Question, do you think there is a chance of success for Panda Express in China?
That's a very good question. A few weeks ago, I gave another talk on Panda Express. So actually, to do some research, I made a trip to the Panda Express store on Culver to just to check it out. Okay, it's if you want to ask my gut feeling, it's not going to happen. It's Panda Express. I don't think it's going to succeed in China. Back a few years ago, there was a Chinese restaurant opened by a Chinese American and another American business person offering Americanized Chinese cuisine in Shanghai. Okay, it's a restaurant called Fortune Cookies. Okay, I actually visited that restaurant. It was an interesting, novel, and interesting idea. I don't think it's an idea that would work, and it turns out that the restaurant could only stay open for a few years. Has been closed for good. Yeah. And there was a question about Cecilia Chang, right, the founder of the Mandarin restaurant, the legendary Mandarin restaurant. Cecilia Chang is also someone who has influenced Alice Waters tremendously. Okay, the two remain friends for many years. The question is whether I have had the opportunity and honor of meeting her. No, I have not. Friends made arrangements for me to meet her, but every time something came up, either on her end or on my end, and so it did not happen. So it's very she passed away, but her legacy lives on.
Great, thank you. So our next question is, How has censorship affected the importance of the collection? And this one might be best handled by Ying.
Yeah, okay. I think this question, how could I say, censorship definitely have impact on this collection. And but scholars have been trying hard, and also archives and the publishers have been trying hard to publicize those censored. And I believe there's a Japanese publisher, they are publishing something called there's a collection at the University of Maryland. They acquired from American who was at the in Japan during post-war time, and when the Japan was surrendered, and he collected lots of materials that was later censored by Japanese government. He was lucky to bring those back now to the US. So now these are made available at the University of Maryland, and they have indexed this collection, and now it's available online for everybody to search. So scholars and publishers and also librarians have been trying very hard to bring those censored contents back for scholarly use, for public use, I would say.
Yeah, I hope censorship would never come to the topic of food.
Yeah, I don't think of topic of food would be lots of censorship around, definitely. But that's a good question. We have been trying very hard to do that, but definitely has a very impact on this.
Great. So next question. Do you ever use the collection to read for fun rather than research?
I do, right? You know, I have been doing that since I was a graduate student at Cornell, right? And but recently, I have been doing that less and less, because a lot of fun stuff, you know, can be accessed through internet, right? You know, sometimes just by using your phone, yeah. And now I'm using databases more than any other kinds of library collections.
Great. So our next question is, what Chinese restaurants in Orange County would you recommend to receive a Michelin star?
Well, I'm going to convey that question to the Michelin guide. It's a good question. You know, frankly, probably it's a little too early, premature to expect a Michelin star for any of the Chinese restaurants in Irvine yet. But I can see that coming in the near future. You know, because of the growing Chinese community, right? Yeah, in both in diversity and in size. You know, the restaurant landscape, the Chinese restaurant landscape in Irvine, you know, has been changing very rapidly in the last 10 years. Okay, so if that trend continues, you know, we can expect more Chinese restaurants to come to Irvine. And speaking of Michelin-starred restaurant, right? I don't know how many of you have been to the Din Tai Fung store in South Coast Plaza, right? The Din Tai Fung store, the original one in Taipei, received a Michelin star years ago. Okay.
Our next question is, what are your thoughts on Americanized foods such as orange chicken and California rolls? Do you think it is the result of capitalism, for-profit system, or more of an homage to a traditional dish or idea from a culture?
That is a great question. That is a great question. It's a question that that requires another lecture, another book, okay, to answer comprehensively. No, so it's more than just a creation of capitalism. I don't think it is that simple. It has to do with a number of other interlocking factors. Very complex. One of them is the ways in which cuisines travel, right? In terms of Chinese food, right? It's the troubles of Chinese food to America, right? It's not just simply a story of Chinese cuisine crossing the Pacific Ocean, right, from Canton to China. That's what happened to early Chinese restaurants in the late 19th century and early 20th century in the U.S., right? This is a process that is layered. Okay, for example, when you think of Taiwanese food culture, of dishes like Taiwanese beef noodle soup, right? It is a dish that originated in Sichuan province. Okay, but then when the people who created that dish in Taiwan, they also blended a lot of local indigenous elements of cooking from Taiwan before bringing that to the U.S. and to other countries, right? So and also in the U.S., right, a very important story about the popularity of Chinese food in the U.S. is that many restaurants made adaptations, especially in the early decades. Okay, and just so that it'll be liked more by American customers, in the perception of those who operate and own Chinese restaurants. Okay, and so orange chicken, Americanized orange chicken, is one of those dishes. Okay. By the way, speaking of orange chicken, it has been the best-selling item in Trader Joe's for a number of years. Okay, and I think it's Panda Express. Okay, also made a lot of special effort to deliver and to create its own signature orange chicken. Okay, so for my research, actually, I interviewed several young people. I said, "Why you guys like orange chicken in Panda Express?" Okay, they said, "Well, it's fried chicken, right? With a lot of sugar. Why not?" I don't think I've answered that good question comprehensively, but it is a great question.
Great, thank you. Next question, can you comment on Din Tai Fung and the reasons for the success of a Taiwanese restaurant chain serving Shanghai food? What was the recipe for success?
I was tempted, but I never owned a restaurant. Okay, but let me give it a try. Okay, recipe for success. For opening a restaurant in general, and the success of Din Tai Fung in particular. Okay, lots of reasons. Okay, one of them is the willingness and ability of the restaurant owners to learn from other cultures. Okay, the owners of Din Tai Fung in Taipei actually learned a lot from the food professionals in Japan in terms of how to precise in measuring the ingredients, and how to be consistent. That's one of the elements of success.
Great, thank you. How did the use of classical literature influence your research? How relevant was it for you? And what more could UCI provide?
I mean, many reasons for me to use classical literature, and I have learned a lot. Okay, one of the lessons that I've learned is the philosophy of the Chinese. Their belief in the intimate connection between what we eat, between food on one hand and our health on the other. Okay, actually, many early cookbooks recipes started out as recipes for health. This is a characteristic in the development of early food writings shared by many cultures.
Thank you. So this is a fun question. There are many similarities between Chinese food and Italian food, such as noodles and dumplings. Do you think historically one had influenced the other?
Besides the belief that Marco Polo took noodles from China to Italy, not that much that I can think of, frankly, but there are parallels, right? One of the most important parallels is that both the Chinese and Italians, they love food, and they treat their food very seriously. Okay, so this is a characteristic shared by people in France, in Italy, in China, and in India. Okay, in very sharp comparison with what is going on in the US, right? Yeah, in France, for example, people spend an average of probably 130 or so minutes on a daily basis on eating, right? Where in the US, people spend much less time on eating, and this is a phenomenon. The fact that Americans treat meals as something they have to take care of. It's a chore. This phenomenon goes back all the way to the 19th century, when a lot of American cookbook writers themselves commented on.
What are some of the focuses of the UCI Libraries East Asian Collection today?
Can you repeat that question?
Sure. So what are some of the focuses of the UCI Libraries East Asian Collection today? Maybe Ying, this is one for you to jump in on. I think you're on mute, Ying.
You're on mute.
Okay. Thank you for the question. And the current East Asian collection at UCI Library mainly focus on modern literature, history, and political science. Basically, it's try to meet corresponding to our faculty and the students' research and teaching needs. So our focus is more modern literature, history, sociology, and also political science, arts, but it's more modern period, I would say, from Qing Dynasty, Ming Dynasty onwards. And we had a faculty who do Song Dynasty, but he is retiring. So that's our current focus. And so that's for Chinese. For Japanese, we have a Heian period. So that's pre-modern and also modern. Korean collection is more modern because we currently don't have the pre-modern studies on campus. Thanks for the question.
Thanks, Ying. And while we have you here, we have one more question for you. So this person says, I only know a little bit about the Council of East Asian Librarians. Does its membership include librarians from mainland China? If so, what topics about collections, building them, archiving them, making them available to readers, etc., do they discuss with members based outside of China? To what extent, if any, are their librarianship concerns different from their non-China-based counterparts?
So there are several questions out there, right?
Yeah.
And as far as I know, for the first question regarding the membership, I'm not aware of any CO members who are from mainland China. But according to CO's website, on the membership, everyone can join, free to join, as long as they pay the membership fee, right? And it could be in total pay the membership fee of AAS, which is the parent organization of CO, Association for Asian Studies. That will be more than $100. Depends on your salary rank. And also the CO has a membership fee, which is $30 per year. So in total, perhaps $200, almost that. If you pay that, if you are a librarian, then you can join. So, but so far as I know, there are no CO member from mainland China. But we do have lots of, because CO members travel a lot to China, Japan, and Korea. They have a lot of professional relationship with librarians in those three countries. Does that answer the
Great.
question? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. This one's back to Professor Chen. So would you comment on the service style of Chinese restaurants? Should Chinese restaurants keep the relatively traditional way of sharing dishes or adapting more Western style of individual dishes? Is the serving style connected to the Chinese culture?
Serving style. Another very fascinating question. Yeah, it is a question that I addressed very directly in an article that I'm going to publish in November on the impact of the pandemic on Chinese food. Okay, so one of the impacts is that people have become more conscious and more concerned about the communal style of dining. Whereby people, all the people on the dining at the dining table using their own chopsticks to get the food for themselves, right? And so one person, one of my informants said that when I'm sharing food with my friends and family, I'm not only sharing food, I'm also sharing my germs with them. Right. So the concern is growing, and this is not the first time that people in China and in the U.S. have that kind of concern about the dining, the serving style in Chinese cooking. Back in the first half of the 20th century, there was a national debate on the necessity of or the desirability of the communal style of dining, and a lot of people criticized that. And the second time, this dialogue, this conversation resurfaced was during the SARS epidemic. Okay, so whenever there's a health concern, a serious health concern, people start to question the desirability of the communal style of dining. At the same time, this style of dining has persisted, in spite of the criticisms that started back in the early 20th century, because this has been a very important part of the total package of Chinese food. Of Chinese foodways. A lot of people say, this has been a very integral part of Chinese culture. So it is a conversation that's going to continue perhaps for decades. But based on the data that I've collected, right, I think people, more and more people are willing to question and even change that style of serving in the tradition of Chinese cuisine.
Great, thank you. What Irvine or nearby restaurants would you go to for home-style Chinese food?
Quite a few. One of them is Sichuan Impression. That's in Tustin, I think. Yeah, and another restaurant that we go to is quite a bit is Meijiu Dongpo on Culver. Yeah, this knowledge is too local. Yeah. And you know, people have different preferences.
Well, thank you so much. And that finishes our questions for the evening.
Well, great. Thank you again, Professor Chen and Dr. Ying Zhang. That was really great. We learned so much from this Q&A session, and thanks everyone for your questions. If you haven't had a chance to check out our virtual exhibit, I hope you will do so, and we'll probably put the link of it in the chat. We hope that you'll join us for a series of free events that are related to the exhibit. The next exhibit is not to be missed. It's called Conversation Kitchen, in collaboration with UCI Illuminations, and it's on Wednesday, December 2nd, 6 to 8 p.m. It features Professor Yong Chen again with Chef Jessica Van Roo, and they will be talking about Chinese cuisine, sharing recipes and the history behind them, and I believe there'll be a virtual cooking demo as well. So you'll want to register for this free event. As well as in January, we're going to have an anime manga event on Astro Boy in January, and in February, I-Ching demonstration during the Lunar New Year event. In March, we'll come up with a Korean event to be determined. And in April, a manga drawing event, which will be quite fun. And you'll find information on our library website. And if you would like to support the library's initiatives and public programs like this one, please consider becoming a member of the UCI Libraries Gateway Society. And for those of you who need to leave, we thank you for attending, and for those who can stay a little longer, especially if you had more questions to ask Professor Chen and Ying, we invite you to join a virtual meet and greet to network with each other. And you can find that link if you click on the chat, and in the chat there will be a link to the next Zoom meet and greet, so that we can continue the conversation. So please join me in a final thank you to our speaker and our curator, and thank all of you for coming, and have a nice evening.
Thank you all.